Today I'm going to talk about ethnographic research, specifically a certain kind called contextual inquiry. Show of hands, anyone who's done contextual inquiry before? Thank God it's not everybody, because this would be really boring, but it's enough of you, so that's good. That makes me feel better. What is contextual inquiry? So it's in the field data gathering technique for examining and understanding users, their workplace tasks, issues, and preferences. So it's going out in the field where the people who are going to use the software that you're building or you're redesigning and watching them do what they do in their own environment. Kind of like these people are doing. So, I mean, what could go wrong? This seems like a fantastic idea, right? So why do contextual inquiry? So a few reasons. Users are in their own environment. So you get to watch people do things that they normally do where they normally do them. You can observe environmental and social factors, which is just fantastic. So you can find out, is it bright? Is it loud? Is it dark? Is it cold? Maybe a little cold now. You can involve social factors. So what's the office like if it's office software, right? Is it fast-paced? Is it laid back? You can pick up on the values, issues, and concerns of the user, so the things that are important to them. And also, it's easier for people to show you what they do than to actually discuss it in abstract. And any of you that have small children or have tried to design anything for small children will know that asking a 6-year-old to explain what they did can take 4 or 5 hours. But asking a 6-year-old to show you what they did can take about 30 seconds. So it definitely helps with that. And my personal favorite reason for doing contextual inquiry is that what people say they do and what they actually do are usually different. So, and it can really help you overcome that in your design. So there's 2 things I want to try to get to. One is a case study, and then I will try to give you some tips and some hints onto how you can fit contextual inquiry into your own design process. So a few years back, I worked at this company called Tandem 7, and we got this great account to redesign an entire banking site for this bank down in Baltimore. And it's a huge bank. They do everything from savings to retirement planning to stock trading. And they have this in-house software that runs all of this. It was off the shelf. It was not very customizable. Everybody hated it. So they wanted to build something of their own from scratch. This was a huge engagement, maybe about 3 years. And the great thing was it was the type of client that understands that about 1/3 of the budget can go towards discovery and design. So it was just great to have an invested client who understood this. Having a blank. So the reason that they brought Tandem 7 in was that we have a pretty well-established UCD process. We were known as an agency that was good with this, and we did most of the things that I'm sure you guys who come from similar environments do. Everything from the market research side, so focus groups and surveys, to more human factor things like personas and sitemaps and heuristic evaluations and that sort of thing. So when we were and usability testing. And I love usability testing. I'm a big fan of usability testing. I love to people watch. And it's always sort of my favorite part of the process. I mean, like, you can pay someone to do it for you, so you can go to a lab and they'll give you snacks. There is a place in Baltimore that has a 4-star chef that will make you crab cakes, and you can eat crab cakes and you can watch somebody use your products, which is just fantastic. And it's always like you bring somebody into a lab, right? And you tell them, just act the way you normally do, right? And then you say there's 25 people behind a two-way glass, but just act the way you normally do, right? And then, if you're doing eye tracking, you hook some sort of futuristic apparatus on their head, right? And you say, but just act the way you normally do, right? And then you bark all these commands at them, like, how would you search, right? How would you get home? But just act the way you normally do, it's fine, right? So I still like usability testing, but ever since we've been doing a lot more contextual inquiry, I seem to take it more as a grain of salt, and I think it's better as part of a whole sort of end-to-end suite of tasks that you do. But it certainly has value. So with this client at the bank, we did some initial work, but we felt like we weren't getting to the core of the issues. We had some personas that didn't really gel well with the stakeholders. We did some early prototypes that didn't really test very well. And so we went back to the office, and some of the big brain PhD type guys that we work with suggested trying this technique called from Ethnographic Research called Contextual Inquiry. And we said, sure, this sounds like a great time to do it. So we went down to the bank. We spent a week there on site. It was this bank in Baltimore. So we walk into the office. It's on the waterfront. It's kind of like this, these big floor-to-ceiling windows, exposed brick. It's loud, it's noisy, it's low cube, so it's kind of everybody can talk to each other. It's a very active office, right? People are getting up, walking around, talking to each other. And the first group that we were interviewing was this 5-person team, and it's managed by a woman, and they were awesome. They were responsible for so much, like onboarding, accounts payable, like they would write you the check when you bought a stock, make sure that you got paid when you sold the stock, and it's just these 5 little people at this desk, and they have a ton of work. And their phones are ringing, it's busy, it's loud, and so the first thing we do is we conduct an interview. And there's sort of 2 reasons to conduct the interview. For one, it's good just to hear the sort of inputs and outputs of how work comes into this department and then how work goes out of this department, right? But it's also to get the person that you're going to be watching, just to get them comfortable. So if you're sort of good at small talk, it's a great time to kind of get the person to open up. And it's a little bit like therapy. You let them vent about what they like about their job, what they don't like about their job, and it gets you to be a little closer with them. Because eventually you're going to be standing over their shoulder and you're going to ask them to show you what they do for a living, which is always a little awkward, right? So we take this woman aside and we ask her what she likes and does not like about the software that they have. And she takes a couple minutes and she thinks about it and she's like, well, there should be more pictures, it should be more colorful. It'd be great if the buttons looked nicer, and it was a little easier to find things. So if we went back and designed just on that, I think we would end up with something like this, right? And I'm sure you guys have had clients basically tell you the same thing, right? So we go back to her desk, though, and we notice this. So she's got Post-it notes all over her desk, and I'm sure you've seen stuff like this, right? So they have this sort of non-traditional password system. So to use her password, most of the time she has to call tech support and ask them to just reset her password and to log her in, because they won't let them use the same password twice. They don't have any on-screen hints for passwords. They won't send password hints, and you can't see the password as you type it, right? Because it's a bank and it's supposed to be very, very secure. So what people do is they either call to have the password reset, or they write the password down on a piece of paper and they stick that on their desk, which is very secure, right? So the other thing is the system logs you out really fast because there's a lot of sensitive information that's up on the screen. Well, the thing is, it's a busy office, so people come by and they're talking, and while they're talking to her, she's doing all this data entry, she stops to talk, she comes back, and she gets logged out. And this happens to her 5 or 6 times a day, right? And this is just infuriating, and everybody hates this. So the other thing is she'd like to be able, and this is going back about 3 or 4 years, but she would like to be able to do some work away from her desk, right? And it's a lot of data entry, but she for one, it'd be great to work from home, but it would also be great to just get away, go somewhere quiet, and to work. But the company culture itself, they feel like there's a lot of data entry involved. Data entry is not really conducive to a mobile device. But when we watch her work and we hear her talk, we find out things like there's a lot that she could do that doesn't involve data entry. She could be checking the status of an account. She could be approving things, declining things, moving a file from one part of the account to another, right? So there's a lot that could be done on a mobile device. And there might have been one more thing I forget. But, oh yeah, so because the software services the entire company at the risk of alienating anyone, like everything is available on every screen. So there might only be 2 things on one page that this person needs, but she has to wade through everything that everybody else would also need. So what we walked away with from this interview are very specific requirements, not things about it would be nice if the buttons were nice or there should be more photographs, but we walked away with things like an autosave, log out reminders and alerts, password reminders. There should be a scaled down mobile solution, a contextual task-based interface, right? These are very specific requirements that you can actually build on and will actually provide some value to the user. Although, I guess there's nothing wrong with pictures of small furry animals on it. Whatever, if you like that. So now I want to try to blow through the rest of the time, and I can give you some hints and some tips on how you can incorporate contextual inquiry into your own design process. So when is the best time to do contextual inquiry? Early stages of developments are great. So for us, we consider this part of our discovery phase, which is the first thing we do at the start of every project. It's really great to use when when the environment really influences how a product is being used. It's also really fantastic because as designers, design, but you get called into all sorts of industries, right? So one week you're working at a hospital on medical software or a device. One week you could be working at an airport. One week you could be working at a casino, right? So anytime that you're really not a practice or domain expert, it's just a great way to learn how people work, what they do, what the culture is. So things like call centers, trading banking systems, if you have to build a kiosk, anything that's really workflow intensive, where there's a lot of inputs and outputs and people have to sign off on work and it goes through all these steps. And I try to do it as much as I can, honestly. Keep in mind, contextual inquiry is not an interrogation. Sometimes people really freak out about this, and it sounds a lot. It's not that different than when your company sort of makes you interview for your own job, right? It's awkward, it's uncomfortable, and people normally get scared that they think that you're not there to see how the software works or how the website works, but they think you're there to see how they do their jobs. So it's really important, and part of the way that you can do this is first at that first initial interview that you do with them, but to really establish that they're the master, you're the apprentice, and they should think of you as it's your first day of the job, you're a new employee, and they're teaching you how to work there, right? And that's why I said I always start with this basic interview. And the other thing is to always try to focus more on the task they're doing and less time discussing how it's done. So it's not like a usability test where you're going to walk them through a series of tasks. You're more just there to kind of watch them do what they do on a normal basis, right? You don't want to sort of prompt them. Once in a while, I would say it's OK if they just do something really, really strange and you're just like, wow, what the hell just happened there? But for the most part, I just let them do what they do. Couple things to keep in mind. You're going to take a lot of notes, because you're not really talking that much and you're just kind of watching them work and you want to capture all this. And a big part of it is not setting up a lot of video equipment, not putting a microphone in their face. So it's better off to just, notes, notes, notes. So it's good to take 2 people, so kind of one of you can watch, one of you can take the notes. And there is one thing that I would recommend. There's these LiveScribe Echo. It's a pen, it records, but it also will then automatically dump that into a PDF. So that's a good way to kind of record it, but not have it be very obvious that you're sticking like a full, like a boom mic in their face or anything while they're talking. It's really subtle. And then that way everything is already transcribed as a PDF. Planning. So you're going to do everything that you normally do when you need to recruit users. So you'll do your screener, all that recruitment stuff that you normally have when you bring users in. You have to do a little bit more legwork around this because one, you have to kind of explain to the company or the place that you're going in exactly what this is you're doing, because it's a little odd to have this stranger or two come in and follow people around the office all day. Scheduling, it can be a little bit more difficult here because it's not like when you do user testing or something and you can tell everyone to go to the focus group facility. Like you need time to go into the people's office, make sure that it's a day that they have stuff to do, because not everybody may be using that software that day or that website that day. People have other things they do throughout the course of a day. So and then there's always all these legal issues, right? Because we've had to sign NDAs and that sort of stuff. So you have to get in some cases, your lawyer to talk to their lawyer, which is always pleasant. So it takes a little more time sometimes to set things up. So some tips and some best practices. I usually recommend people always want to know when you do these types of talks, what's the best sample size and that sort of thing. So I would say 3 to 5 interviews of people who do the same thing. Honestly, by the time you do 3, you're going to be going out of your mind because you've seen the same patterns over and over and over again. If it's in the case of the bank we did, everything was in that bank. But if you're doing something that's used by different organizations, then I would say usually if you do about 3 organizations, you'll get a fairly good sample size. And you'll get a good representation of how different companies do this. A big part of it is building trust. I will sometimes send my email out beforehand and tell people if they have any questions, they can contact me about it, and then I'll send my email out again after, thanking the person, and then also telling them if they have any follow-up questions or anything they want to talk about after the interview, they can do that as well. And like I said, the first couple times that you sit down and you talk with these people, like really do your best to get them comfortable that, you know, this isn't a job interview, this is about the software or the website. And then lastly, the last 2 points is that you really, because you're going to be taking so many notes and you're going to be taking them frantically, you really want to try to make something out of them as soon as you're done doing this. So I'll go out into the lobby if it's okay with the company that I'm at and just ask me if I can grab a chair, and I will just start to organize all my notes, then break things down as to important behaviors I've seen, tasks I've seen, you know, things that can be easily turned into actionable design items. And then also the time that you're there, make sure that you really pay attention to things like the activity, like are they standing, are they sitting, are they lying, are they walking, you know, what's the environment like, because that's the main point of why you're doing this exercise. And I think I am at 20 minutes. So I'm going to say thank you, and do you do questions, or are we good? All right.
We do have time for questions. No, you're going to need that.
Yeah, sure.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. So the question is, what do you do with your notes after? Do you code them? And we do. We write them up, and then we start to put personas together almost immediately. So we'll have, because you kind of have an idea maybe going in, or we'll just start to group them in PowerPoint or in Word like as soon as we can, and just kind of make really, really high-level personas out of them. Anybody else? Sure.
So when you have, like, you monitor 3 users and there's no standardization in their process, you bring that back to leadership and try to standardize their process and flow. When you're monitoring, let's say 3 people, they do it all 3 different ways.
Yeah.
They're doing the same job.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. So the question was, if there's no standardization to their process, do you bring that back to the leaders? And this is a great way to upsell as far as design, user experience, and consulting goes. And we do, absolutely. So there'll be, at the end of this exercise, there's usually a presentation for the stakeholders, just like we would do any other design presentation, and then we'll go back over all the things that we've saw. So, yep. Cool. Thanks, guys. Yeah.